Okay, we are recording. Mim, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, mate. I literally just came back from Soho from recording like a little voiceover. So I've got chili in front of me, which
Nice.
I'm trying to eat because I haven't had no lunch at the moment. So
You
if you
fill
hear
your boots,
chewing
mate.
sounds, I apologize.
That's that ASMR stuff, isn't it? Where people love all that, mate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
We've
true,
got an
true, true.
exclusive, man. We got Mim smashing his chili. Right.
That's hilarious.
All right. Well, look, before we get into it, let's just start right at the beginning of the playlist and let's kick things off. I'm going to ask you, please, to tell me the song that you regard as having the greatest ever intro, please.
Yeah, so the song that I think has got the greatest ever intro is a track by a rapper called Cassidy, and the track is called "I'm a Hustler."
Mhm.
And it's the clean remix. And the reason for that is because it's two reasons. When I was really young, I remember going to Canada and visiting one of my cousins who lives over there, and his ringtone was this song. And I just remember hearing it when I was really young and being like, "Yo, that's actually a tune." And then as I got older and I started listening to it, I agreed that obviously it was a tune. But aside from that, the intro starts like I'm a hustler, I'm a hustler, and that for me, it always just makes me like, because I know I am one, and I know I work like really hard in regards to what I do, and I have been doing it for a long time, right? So I think that track, and because it starts so punchy and heavy, and it goes in to it ASAP, it really resonated with me. It was weird when I had to choose what one, I just kept thinking like, I've listened to so much music over the time in my years. What am I gonna? This is such a hard question to answer, but without thinking, it's like that one came to the forefront of my mind. So yeah, that's the reason behind it.
I want to talk intros, and when I have musicians on, I will generally ask them about songwriting. I'm right in saying you perform in spoken word, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So when you do that, um, do you tailor your pieces that when you perform them, that you go in hard from the beginning and hook them right at the beginning? What's your
Yeah.
approach to that?
It's a really good question because I'm at early stages in my, like, I'd say, performing spoken word poetry career. I've performed at a few like open mic nights. Performed at a recent event called Dean and Dunya, which was put on by one of my good friends called Azan. And that we had it's the question that you asked is so interesting because I was there with the DJ and I'd recorded a track that had a backing track to it, and it was very hard and it was very punchy sounding, and my vocals were very like bassy and they were very deep. But as I got there, I felt like it was too much for the environment. It was a very intimate space, so there was like a few people in front, a few people on the side, a few people on the side there. So what
What
we
you
had,
thought it was too hard?
yeah, it was like it was too loud. For example, like what I recorded.
Yeah.
So what we done is we got the track, the backing track. We got we changed it to a different backing track, made the sound like less bassy, and I didn't perform it in a way that was like screaming and shouting in a way. Do you know what I mean? I think if we was in a stadium, for example, or if you was in an environment where it was a lot bigger and the speakers were bigger, then I think it would have sounded good. But because we was in a small, intimate space, we kind of tailored it down, you know?
Sure. Sure. How was you with that in regards to kind of making that knee-jerk decision there and then to kind of spin it a little bit and change your approach to it? Did that kind of affect your sort of confidence?
Nah, you know what it is with me, bro? I adapt very quickly to a vibe or a scenario or an environment. Like I base my decisions on a feeling rather than thinking all the time, you know? So when we done that, I was literally like, yo, how will this feel when I perform this? Like, how will I feel? And how will that ultimately make the audience feel? If I came in there and said, yes, I'm small venue, but we're going to turn the speakers up like really loud and I genuinely think if I came to an event like that, that's not really the vibe I wanted to kind of witness, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that instance, um, yeah, I'd say it was just a quick reactive like feeling that I was able to react with rather than yeah, thinking about it for a long time.
Yeah. How did spoken word kind of get into that? I'm fascinated by spoken word. This podcast comes out of Distraction Pieces Network, which is run by my pal, a former spoken word artist called Scroobius Pip.
Yeah.
And Pip smashed that scene, you know, back in the day. And so I'm always interested as to kind of what makes people that are already sort of establishing careers in other, you know, areas to go, no, I'm going to do this. Where did the decision come to do it?
You know what, bro? It's like it never really came about from a point of view where I thought I could do it and base a career off it and make money from it, for example. Yeah. It came when I lost my grandmother when I was like 25 years old. And I've always been a writer, like within my career, whether that's a broadcaster on the BBC or whether that's acting in other people's projects. I've always been writing like either my own short stories, screenplays, sketches, whatever it is. So like the writing lended itself to the spoken word poetry because I was trying to understand, like through writing, I think sometimes I'm able to understand things better than through thinking. Because I'll be sitting there thinking, oh, why does that happen? Or why is the world like that? Or what do I need to do here? But then I'll start writing, and what will come out writing wise will be different to the way that I think. And that led me to just want to do it more and more. Yeah, and I'm a massive like rap music, hip hop music fan. So I love like rap music is rhythm and poetry at the end of the day. Do you know what I mean? So for me, I just thought like, yes, but I think a lot of people brand stuff as in this is that genre, this is that genre. But for me, I call it the spoken word poetry. But yeah, it is what it is at the end of the day, you know.
I'm going to take you back for track 2, and I'm going to ask you to tell me the first song that you remember hearing that had an emotional impact on you, please, ma'am.
Yeah, so the first track I remember hearing that had an emotional impact on me was Eminem, Clearing Out My Closet. And I remember where, yeah, I was living in Kent. I was in about year 5 or year 6 in school. And I remember that coming on one of the music channels, like the Box or something old school. I remember listening to it, and it's the first time I've heard a man, express his feelings with his relationship towards his mum. And I never heard no man in my vicinity, in my reality at that point, ever do that. So I was listening to it, and I remember just feeling like, wow, this guy really don't like his mum. Like Eminem really didn't like his mum in that track. Like, why is that? And then I was like, it started making me, for the first time, start thinking about my relationship towards my mum and how much, obviously, I love my mum, but she wasn't able to be the mum that I necessarily needed when I was growing up. You know, I had to lean on grandmother, auntie, everyone else in order to kind of feel that kind of nurturing sense. So yeah, that was like the first time I ever felt emotion that had an emotional impact from a song, and it was by Eminem.
What was the emotion, if you had to pinpoint it?
Well, it's a good question. I felt like obviously he was very angry at his mum in that track, and I didn't feel. I remember thinking, oh, he's so angry, but for me, I think it was someone giving me a voice to feel how I felt. And if I had to sum up that emotion, like I think emotions are broke down through being glad, sad, or mad. So I weren't as mad as him, and I weren't glad. So probably like mad in a way that's like probably a bit like, yeah, and then I get what you're saying, because like my relationship with my mum weren't like the best, and I hear where you're coming from. So, but it wasn't frustration or anger. It was probably just a bit maybe of annoyance.
Yeah. Have you been watching the recent hip hop documentaries that Chuck D's put together?
I've seen some of them. Yeah, some of them.
Man, like, and seeing Eminem on there, and like, and you know, there's lots of kind of talk of, you know, Dre and a Public Enemy and Cool J and all of these kind of pioneers. And it's only when you start to kind of move away from that kind of golden, you know, embryonic years of hip hop that you then start to look a little bit sort of, you know, nearer to now, even though it's probably still 20 years ago. And it's insane the impact that Eminem had on hip hop. And and like you say, it was that, and I think in a lot of hip hop, certainly in the hip hop that was coming out at that point, vulnerability wasn't something that was necessarily shown. And I think, you know, if you disagree, speak up. But I think Eminem showed that vulnerability and just gave a different flavor to hip hop.
And but I think what you're saying is so important, because I think what he was surrounded with at the time was this braggadocious. I'm wearing a big pimp jacket. I got a cigar in my mouth. I've got a big hat. I get all the girls. I got all the liquor. I got all of this. Eminem's coming out with a track like "I Am the Way I Am," for example, and he's breaking down his relationship with his mum, his relationship with his girl, and I think for me it connected because I felt like he was writing from a real, authentic inner place, which a lot of other musicians weren't really doing.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons why I'm a big J. Cole fan, for example, because he doesn't come out with the braggadocious cars, lyrics, garms, all of that. He comes from a place of like introspection to a point where he's trying to understand himself as a man in the world. So I think that type of lyrics and writing resonate with me so much, man. They always have.
You mentioned Kent there. Was that where you grew up, in Kent?
So I was born in the West Midlands. I lived there for a year. My mum and my dad split up. My grandma brought me to South London. Lived in South London for about 8-9 years. Moved out to Kent for about 3 or 4 years. Then moved back down to South West London. So, and I now went to uni in Leeds, and I've been back in South London. So South London's probably been the area that I've grown up in the most, but I've been around the UK,
Yeah. How did you find that? I mean, we'll get onto school in a moment, but we're sort of, I guess, segue into that by moving around as a young, you know, as a young lad. You know, I imagine that involved the change in the schools. How was that as a young boy?
Man, I'm so glad I'm doing this podcast because I love these conversations, right? Because like people look at me now, right, and they might think and they might see, oh, he's a creative, talented individual, human who's got success in his career or whatever, right? But I'm a product of my childhood. I've literally moved around to so many different schools in my childhood, having to adapt, having to make new friends, having to be friendly with every single person again and again and again, just due to the instability in my family household that led me to kind of have these skills that I now have to operate in my adult life. And they say that a child's development between 0 to 4 will ultimately be able to determine like where they go in the rest of their life. And now what I'm realizing is my development as a child from 0 to 4 was so different to other people who are my age. Their development to 0 to 4, theirs was very nurtured, theirs was very cared for, theirs was very nuclear, stable. There wasn't rapid movement and needing to be around all the time. So yeah, it has a profound effect on you, but I think you need to just realize what it is. And I think that I've slowly been doing a lot of work around that stuff, and I'm trying to understand it a bit more, you know.
And at the time, like, you know, changing school as a young man, did you, you know, was you aware that, right, fuck, I've got to dig deep here, and I've got to put myself out there and make friends. Like, I can't just sit back, you know, I've got to, you know, put myself out there, which is, you know, for somebody to walk into a room, you know, me at 49 years of age, I'm not walking into a room thinking, right, I'm now going to go and work the room. I'm thinking, right, okay, this is intimidating. I don't know anyone in here.
Yeah.
But to, you know, to throw that on a 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 year, 9-year-old kid, that's so intense. And like, you know, was you aware in your own head that you had to throw yourself into it?
I wasn't aware what I was doing at a young age. I don't think any 4 to 9-year-old knows what they're doing, right? Only after I'm realizing, whoa, I really had to do it to survive.
Yeah.
So it was literally like, you get put in this room, you have to now survive. I've dropped you off to school, go deal with school.
Yeah.
It's not my mum or my dad dropping me off. It's like an uncle that's dropped me off.
Yeah.
Been like, go school. I've gone school. I've made all these friends. Everyone likes me, but it's because I've had to do that.
Yeah.
At a young age, you know. So when I now do it in a room, I'm not thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's not even like you said, the interesting thing. You said, "Oh, I need to go and work the room," but I'll just walk into a room, and my natural go-to is like, "Oh, how you doing? You're right." Just to, because I've just been like that since a child.
But that's not easy, man. Like for so many people, you say that so like, well, yes, just what I do. That's you. But for a lot of people, like that would be like absolutely like terrifying just to walk up to somebody you don't know. Go, oh, hey there, man. So yeah,
you're right. You're right. Yeah, I'm learning that now. Like a lot of people don't have that. Like people call it an ability. I don't think it's an ability, but I think it's a personality trait. I think some people have it, some people don't have it. Some people gravitate towards it later on in their life. But I know why I've got it because of the childhood that I had, and just been developing that. But yeah.
Well, let's talk school. Tell me the song that reminds you of your time at school.
The song that reminds me of my time at school, the one that I chose was So Solid Crew, 21 Seconds.
Banger.
Because, sucked guys. All-time classic, isn't it?
Yeah, mate.
It's a classic. That I must have been in year 6 going into year 7, and I remember buying the album So Solid Crew's They Don't Know, and we had all of them on the front cover. And because I was in Kent, but I grew up in South London, and I'm in Kent, I'm in the HMV, I've seen it. It's reminded me of my like London roots and all the friends that I had back here, my cousins, etc. So I remember buying it, listening to it, and just trying to remember all the lyrics. Because I think back then all it was about copying what you hear in the music, because you're so impressionable as a young person. I only realized after, like a very long time after, that everyone's verse was actually recorded 21 seconds. Like,
no way, I did not know that.
I'm pretty sure. It might not be true.
Yeah.
But I read it somewhere, or someone told me recently, everyone's verse on that equated to 21 seconds. So like,
love that.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? I didn't know either. But yeah, that was probably my favorite tune, man.
So with the stuff that you've said in mind, you know, about the kind of, you know, sort of instability of moving about and maybe, you know, with a great respect, you know, to sort of say something around what, you know, that you wasn't quite getting the nurturing that you'd hoped for from your home situation. You had to look further to extended family. How was school for you?
Yeah, I mean, moving around obviously was probably the bit that I didn't necessarily enjoy as much, but I benefited from doing it. The actual academic side and like getting on with it, I remember in the beginning I didn't like it as much. I wouldn't be able to pay attention as much in school. But then as I got older, later down the line, I started actually enjoying it and started really liking the communication subjects. Finances and maths, I was not a fan of.
Yeah.
I couldn't even get like average grades. I remember getting sent to the highest set because my cousin was in the school that I moved in Southwest London, and automatically they just put me in a higher set because he was very brainy at maths. I stayed in there for about a couple of weeks. They moved me to like the lowest set in maths because I wasn't like the best at it. Whereas the subjects like English, history, media studies, religious education, the ones where you could put a point of view together, or an essay or something, those were the ones that I like excelled in. That's where I got the A's and the B's in. So yeah, it was all right. Towards the end, I started realizing what I'm good at and what I'm not good at.
Did you know what you wanted to be?
Yeah, but I used to lie. Like,
stuntman.
like people used to ask me what you want to be when you're younger. I used to lie and I used to say, yeah, like I'm gonna be a computer analyst because it sounds fancy.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I wanted. No, not at all. Only not from like all the way up until year 9, I'd say no clue what I wanted to be. But then I think I had an amazing media studies teacher, man. God bless this woman's soul, because she introduced media studies in year 10 in my GCSEs. And I was just like, this subject is sick. Like, this is amazing. I loved it. Magazines, TV, video, editing, colors, like news, that it triggered something in my brain. I remember. And then after doing that, I've done A-levels. And then after doing my A-levels, I decided I'm going to go and study journalism at the University of Leeds. And that's when I had a vague idea of like, I want to go into the media industry. Yeah.
Did you have a kind of like an area that you felt that you excelled at within media that was a sort of focus for you at that point?
Yeah, it was radio at the time.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, student radio. So I went to Leeds. I loved, I was young, right? I was like 20, 21. All I was doing was like doing my course, doing my lectures, but then getting music tracks and like putting them together, going and doing a radio show, a very terrible one, which like 3 people would listen to, but just enjoying the whole process. And then my dream was to just like try and become a radio presenter, like a radio DJ on the BBC. That was just like, that's all I ever wanted to do. So yeah, I'd say I started focusing more on that, but I also loved the journalism and the news and like the investigative stories and stuff, what I'll be doing in my course and stuff. So it was a balance, but at that time, I think it was just radio. Yeah.
You're a confident lad at that point?
No, that's a good question. I wasn't. I think radio helped build my confidence.
Yeah. Because there's nowhere to run on radio, is there? It's happening. And like it's that mic goes on and like you can't make mistakes, can you? It's like there's nowhere to go.
You can't hide. Like whatever's gonna come out of your mouth is gonna come out of your mouth. and you can't delete it.
Yeah, it's problematic that.
And everyone heard it. So no, I think the question's so good because I wasn't. And I used to do student radio and community radio to try and build up my confidence and be able to handle myself in conversations. Whereas now I have no issue with conversating with any type of person. Yeah. But that's just due to the experience that I've had in the past, right?
Yeah.
I think I was very introverted. I didn't really speak to people like a lot. Even though I had the background that I did in my childhood, I still lack like certain social skills. But then radio gives you that experience to like have a conversation. Right. But ultimately, it taught me early on about listening and how important that is in order to have a great conversation, because I've realized in the world, I think a lot of people are just not listening. They're listening to their own voice, but they're not listening to someone else in front of them. And I think that training just literally allowed me to just always be present to listen, like this conversation, and other people's conversations. Yeah.
Sorry, man, I wasn't listening there. Sorry, man. Something about radio or something. You're totally right. And you know what? It's like, I've done like 480 of these podcasts now. And I'm lucky that I get to speak to interesting people. And it makes it so easy to listen because they're talking about subjects that I'm passionate about. They're talking about music. They're talking about their creative journey. And as a podcaster and doing stuff on radio, the less I have to talk, the easier it is for me as well. It's like if I could just listen and let these stories unfold, it's great. And
but let me ask you a question, right, as well, because as a person who's done nearly 500 episodes, how the conversations that you have in your real life away from the podcast, are they as stimulating for your brain in comparison to the conversations that you get to have on your podcast?
It's a good thing my wife don't listen to this. And no, I'm lucky because in the kind of fields that I work in the creative industries, and so I get to meet and chat and have lovely conversations, and it's really weird because I think one of the things that I'm trying to do less of is turn all of my passions into work. And because sometimes it's nice to have a passion that isn't work, and you don't try and monetize it and and make it your job. It's like, no, do you know what, I just like doing that. Like, why don't I just leave that over there and not do a podcast about it, or write about it, or whatever. And I think like that's really important. But yeah, I certainly I love chatting to people. I wouldn't do this otherwise. And I'm lucky that I've surrounded myself. I'm nearly 50 now, so I've managed to kind of surround myself at this point in my life with people that I really enjoy their company and their conversations. And so yeah, like equally, stimulating conversations from.
It's really interesting that, because you don't, like, I found it hard in the beginning because I realized I'd be going to either a radio show or I'd be going and having all of these, like, be interviewing like all of these favorite people like Kevin Hart, or like all of these musicians that I've grown up listening to, and then I'd come back and I'd be like, I need to chase that high again, because I had such a great high having a conversation with these people. And then as you get older, you start realizing that, yeah, it's all good. And now I'm really like cool and calm with it, because it's not something that I'm chasing. I'm allowing it to like come to me. Like this podcast, for example, I really want to do and talk about these things and be asked these questions and ask you questions, because that's the way that I learn as well. At the end of the day, it's always been through people. So yeah, I do like it. The thing you said about not changing, not making your passions into your paychecks, like that is something that I'm starting to just kind of make peace with. Not everything needs to be monetized.
Yeah.
Even like the spoken word poetry you were talking about, like that is just something I just want to be able to carry on just doing, and have fun with it and enjoy it and feel good from it, whilst doing all of this other creative stuff in my career and in my job.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's like not everything has to be content. Something can just be fun. And I think, but it's also so easy when you're doing something you really enjoy doing, and there's an audience there. It's I could do something with this. And I think I do think it's important to just every 1 in 5 just go, do you know what? No, I'm going to leave that, and just that's my time, and I'm going to just enjoy that.
Yeah, it's taken me a long time to get to that place, because my whole brain has been thinking from since I was young till now, content.
Yeah.
What can I make? What can I do? How can I put myself out there? How can I get the next opportunity?
But I think that comes from being self-employed.
Yeah.
And working for yourself, and to go right the way back to the beginning, hustling, because you've not got that paycheck at the end of each week. If you work for yourself, whether you're an actor, a broadcaster, whatever you want to do, it can be day to day, week to week, month to month, and so you do have to put yourself out there. And so I think it's so easy to say yes to so many opportunities that get put your way, because you just think this might not come along again. And like, so let's grab this. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with this conversation, but I do think it's important to retain a little bit of your passions just for the love of it.
100%. I agree with that a lot. And I'm learning that as I'm getting older, but I can just notice I'll be in situations, and I used to be like the least creative person that I could think of. Like I used to envy people who could come up with ideas, monetize them, and enjoy the successes from there, right? Now I think it's the opposite, where I'm doing it a bit too much. Not like I'm telling myself to just, it's all right, calm down. Today you do not have to worry about where the next paycheck's coming from and what idea you can come up with. You've got your ideas that you've worked on, start developing them, start thinking of them long term, and just go with the flow with everything else that that I'm kind of able to do. So yeah, it works.
You've chosen really cool records so far, Mim. So tell me the first thing they were buying from a record shop.
First thing I remember buying from a record store, it was a tape. It was a cassette tape. It wasn't even a CD or anything, and it was for the boy band Blue, and it was a track called All Rise. And like in comparison to the three tracks that I just said, this one doesn't fit in any of it, but it was like it was a tune, man.
Yeah.
I remember seeing a music video. I'm buying the cassette just on a whim, like I wonder if this is good, putting it in the radio stereo and listening to it and just being like, yeah, this is a vibe. I really enjoyed it.
Love it. Well, we spoke about confidence a lot so far on here, and one of the things, all of the industries that you've chosen to work within, you know, whether it be acting or broadcasting, fiercely competitive. Tell me about your relationship with drive.
Yeah, so another good question. Yeah, where I work, I'm like trying to even build a career in what I've been able to try and build a career in is probably the most competitive and the hardest industry to, I personally think, try and crack, because it's not like settling for a 9-to-5 job and working in that way. You're on all the time. I think I've always had drive. I think I don't lack with that. I think it's always been there. I've been able to meet some amazing people across my time working that have instilled a level of like drive and taught me things that have helped me, because I haven't been able to get that from no one else, because they understand it, because they've been working in these industries. But I think I've always been ambitious since I was young. And I think the reason I got that is because I'm an only child.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of only children, because they don't have like siblings around them, sometimes they have an overactive imagination in which they're able to kind of manifest or put on a mood board. This is what I want to do with my life. This is where I want to go. That's how I want that to move. But I think I've always had that, man. I don't think that's going anywhere. I think it will always be there.
I always like to ask guests, and it feels like a good time to ask it. You said that, you know, you found yourself surrounded by people that have been in the industry for a long time, you know, that you can draw from their experience and such. Do you suffer with imposter syndrome ever?
Yeah, man. 100%. I've been like all the time. Imposter syndrome was something that I didn't even think I could even get rid of, because it was so it was so like it was a loud imposter syndrome. It was what are you doing? Like, this ain't where you belong. This is not the best thing for you to do. How did you blag it here? What if you get caught for doing it? And I'm thinking, get caught doing what? I haven't done anything wrong. Like now, like I've not done anything illegal or wronged anybody to get and experience what I get to experience in my career. Like, why have I got these voices saying, "No, you can't do that. You can't do
You're
that.
going to get found out in a minute."
Yeah, but I haven't done nothing. Like, go away. And I'm telling you, bro, the place where I'm at right now, in comparison to back then, I don't have that anymore. I don't know what it is. I don't know whether I've been working on my mental health, or I don't know whether it's just coming to terms with it and knowing it comes up and then ignoring it. I think I've just become a bit more like stronger mentally, or content with who I am, as you do as you get older, right?
Sure.
But because I was young, I think I'd let the opinion of other people affect like my state, and now that doesn't happen. But yeah, imposter syndrome massively.
Yeah.
I was proper affected by it, man. And then I had to read up on it and realize what it was, and understand something like that. And now I'm addicted to doing that. That I'm always looking for something new that I can figure out what's going on with me, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, really good question.
You just mentioned there being a little younger. So let's go back a couple of years. And I mean, you're still a young man, but let's talk about track 5 and tell me, please, the soundtrack your years clubbing.
What is it? Clubbing.
Yeah.
That was okay. Yeah, I chose Jay Sean Down.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for this, right? Because when I went to uni, my first year was 2009. I went to University of Leeds, first year freshers. This track would be on everywhere, right? Everywhere, every club we'd go to, every like social gathering. I just remember this being played. And Lil Wayne was on the remix to it because obviously Jay Sean just got signed to Cash Money Records at the time. And it was huge, especially for me, because I'm South Asian, I'm Pakistani, right? We don't necessarily have or had musicians back then in 2009 in the mainstream on a track with Lil Wayne being played in America. So me as like a young Pakistani South Londoner going up to Leeds, studying with my mates, then hearing him in like a club was like, oh wow. Like, okay, yeah, that's I know that person because I listened to some of his stuff like 4 or 5 years ago. I'm not saying like it's a go-to track that I would go back to and maybe listen now. My taste has changed, but back then I remember it being very it had an impact on me because it was another brown man that was singing and like rapping on a mainstream level. And I just remember being like, okay. And then I got to meet him years later after the BBC. And I was just like, oh, wow, okay, this is all like, it's all making sense now.
Somebody that wanted to sort of facilitate a career in acting and broadcasting, and seeing underrepresentation in mainstream media. You know, you talked there about Jay Sean being like the first brand man that that was a hit mainstream, hip hop. Like, did that ever make you question, can I do it?
Yeah, massively. Yeah, all the time. And I think that was one of the voices that I had with the imposter syndrome thing. It was like, you're trying to forge a career in an industry where you haven't really seen that many people that look like you, that speak like you, that dress like you, go and do it. So are you deluded? Like, are you actually deluded? Is it going to happen? But it's like what you're saying with the drive thing, and there's just something that you get up and you want to do it. And now I've realized that I feel like it's part of my purpose, man. I feel like I want to try and, like break the mold and just try and do things that be remembered or make it easier, is what I'm trying to say. Make it easier for people who are coming up behind you in order to have an easier time. And try to drop off some gems for people whilst doing it, That's not saying that I'm going to be groundbreaking or do something for the first time. That I know other people have done that, but I'm just saying, I think that's what gets me up in the morning and goes, right, cool, what can we try and do that will be able to make that impact later down the line? Because only now are we slowly having our time. I personally believe there's so many musicians who are becoming mainstream. The film that I'm a part of that comes out at the end of February is being shown worldwide, and that focuses on like a British family and a Pakistani family, like living coincidentally. It talks about marriage, arranged marriage, like all of these things, and I'm witnessing it now, and I'm like, wow, okay, this is going to be hopefully good for the culture at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Let's take you home. And for track 6, a favourite song from an artist from your home county. Where's home, man? You've been everywhere.
I have been everywhere. So home county is southwest London, Mitcham, like based on the border of Mitcham and Colliers Wood.
Yeah.
It's like an estate. Phipps Bridge is what is known as, obviously notoriously known back in the day, but now not as bad as it was. And the artists that I've chosen, because I put down 2, I couldn't choose one because they both lived on this estate. MIA is a musician. People might know her from like tracks like Swagger Like Us or Borders.
Paper Planes, man. Paper Planes.
Paper Planes, yeah. Smash, that's a smash. I forgot about that one. And yeah, so she's and again, she's like she's Sri Lankan. Not to define her ethnicity in a way, but just her artistry is so unique and amazing.
Have
That
you
when
seen her documentary she made?
yeah, yeah,
Fucking hell, man, that
yeah.
blew me away.
So in that documentary, she lived in a block of flats around here, like
Right.
around here, and her dad was in the living room and they filmed it. And I'm watching that documentary, like, oh yo, she's made it, and she's made a doc about her growing up. And that I see that block of flats like all the time growing up where I've grown up.
I
So
mean,
from
that's inspiring, right?
that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah. So I've seen her do that and been like, yo, if MIA has gone and achieved a critical success worldwide, and she lived here for a bit, like no one can ever tell you you can't go and achieve your dreams at the end of the day.
Yeah. She
Um,
ends up doing like the Super Bowl halftime show with like Madonna and shit.
yeah, it's mad.
Crazy.
She's smart as well, man.
Man,
I like the direction of her music videos. I love how she has like like a political activism voice. Like
absolutely.
she uses her platform in a way that like spreads like a good message to people. And I think that's important. And then the second person that I've chosen is a musician called Fuse ODG. And he had a track that absolutely popped off his career called Azonto. And then there was another record that he released after that called Million Pound Girl, which I absolutely loved. But again, him literally a stone throw away, like down the road. Um, don't live here now, obviously, but I'm saying like back in the day, that's
Yeah.
where they grew up and they were. So those were the two musicians that I chose.
Great. Great choices. Last track. Now I'm going to give you an opportunity to be a tastemaker now.
Cool.
And I'll ask you to tell me, please, a song that you think many people may not know that you would like them to hear.
Yeah, so this is a track yeah, by a musician called George, and an actress and a spoken word performer, artist called Thea, and the track that I've chosen is called Halos. And again, it resonated with me. So it's a real nice record. It's chilled, but he's talking about like halos and him losing his, I think it was his grandmother, or having someone like a death in the family, and kind of like making sense of that through music. But I remember I listened to it through one of my friends in lockdown, and it even reminds me of just like the last like 2-3 years that we had when we couldn't even leave the house and stuff like that. So I don't think a lot of people have heard it. If they have, amazing. If they haven't, then they get to listen to something brand new.
Absolutely. We make it easy for people to do that because we put together a Spotify playlist to accompany the podcast so people can go and listen to all of your picks
Okay, that's really
over on
good.
there. You touched upon the film that's coming soon.
Yeah.
I don't think you said what it was called. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so the film that I'm a part of that's coming out at the end of February is a film called What's Love Got to Do with It. It's a British South Asian romantic comedy. It's got people like Emma Thompson starring in it, Shazad Latif, Asim Chowdhury, Jeff Mirza, yeah, all acting in it. And it looks at the concept of arranged marriage, assisted marriage. And I think as stereotypes go, people who don't belong to the South Asian community sometimes think a lot of Asian people marry their cousins, or a lot of Asian people have arranged marriages for them where they don't know who they're marrying, and it gets done like that. What this film has cleverly done through the writer has been able to kind of show actually there's not bad things that is wrong with that way of meeting someone and dating someone. If you was to hook someone up in a relationship, would it work? Would it be okay? If your family had to choose, would it work and would it be okay? Rather than going through dating apps and matching on Tinder and all of these things. So yeah, it's looking at that. It's really nice. It's a feel good one, man. There's like dancing in it. There's singing in it. It's a rom-com. Like we've had so many British rom-coms, and I think Brits are so great at making rom-com. Like Love Actually, Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Yeah.
It's one of them films you can go watch and feel good afterwards. So I
And we
think,
need that, man. We need that right now.
mate,
More than ever.
Yeah, 100%. Like everybody needs to take their misses, their boyfriends, girlfriends, and just go have a good. When's the last time people went to the cinema
Yeah.
to like watch a film? Some people might not go regularly. I go regularly because I love film, but just go. Like even your mum, like just take your mum and watch it. It's one of them ones that will evoke some hopefully like nice emotions in you. And that's what cinema is good for doing that. And I'm glad to be part of it.
Wonderful. I mean, if people want to kind of keep up to speed with all of your creative output in whatever genre it is, where's the best place to keep up to speed with what you're up to?
I would say Instagram, definitely. Twitter as well. But Twitter's like, I get drawn to Twitter because of words. I'm drawn to Instagram for images and videos and letting people know what I'm up to. So Instagram is MIM _Shaikh, SHAIKH. Twitter's the same, Mim Shaikh, and then an underscore. And then I release I'm starting to get back into the flow of like releasing some stuff on YouTube as well. I've got a YouTube channel. It's called Mim Shaikh Official. There's like spoken word videos on there from like 6-7 years ago, short films, sketches. But I've been so inactive just due to like being busy. I want to like start getting back into the swing of things over here as well.
Oh, well, if it's cool with you, when this comes out, we'll tag you in it. So if people aren't following you already, then we make it nice and easy for them. Mim, it's been a real delight, man. It's been so much fun chatting to you. I really appreciate you coming on and speaking so honestly, and it's been really interesting and lovely, man.
Yeah, no, you're welcome, man. I really enjoyed the questions. I thought the conversation was sick. And yeah, if anybody's able to listen and they learn something, then I think we've done our job, innit?
Absolutely, mate. I'm going to press stop. Don't go anywhere.